Welcome to Alyssa Jean's Star Trek Reviews, and this is my video for my 20 favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager. And yes, there will be 20 of them. In my other video that I did for my 10 least favorite episodes of Voyager, I erroneously said that I would be doing a top 10 favorite video. I said it twice, I believe. However, in a previous video, I think my calendar video for January 2022, I did say a top 20. It will be 20 episodes, not 10. Although I was at one point considering only doing 10 because I don't think Voyager is very deep in as far as how many truly great episodes it has. So I was thinking the back end of my top 20 might be getting into mediocre to maybe even slightly above average territory, so I didn't know if I wanted to do that. But I looked at my list of good episodes I had written down, and I found 20 solid ones, 20 episodes that I can feel really good about. So I'm going to go ahead and do it, and I think the back end of the top 20 is better than just mediocre and slightly above average. They're really solid, really good. I will also say, though, that the back end of my top 20 is a lower quality than the back end of my top 20s for Deep Space Nine and for The Next Generation. But they're good. They're good episodes. And then the top 10 I really love, and then the top 5, some of the best episodes of Star Trek. And my number 1 episode, in fact, does include I would consider a top 3 all-time scene all of Star Trek. So it is very top-heavy. The best is the best in all of Star Trek. The theme for this video is going to be, I wish Voyager did more of that. Because as I said in my other video for my least favorite episodes, I think Voyager was overall a mediocre show. So when they did something really great, I wish they did it more often. And so I will probably bring that up more than once during this video. So without any more rambling, let's go ahead and jump into the top 20. I want to do 20 through 11 relatively quickly, just very short statements on each of those episodes, and then spend more time going through the top 10 once I get to the top 10. So let's go ahead and start with 20 through 11 of my favorite episodes of Voyager. Okay, kicking things off with number 20, Counterpoint from Season 5. This has a story concept that I would have liked to have seen more of this type of thing where Voyager has to travel through this alien space where they have to continue to submit to these inspections. And I would like to see these type of story arcs sustained over many episodes. And in this particular episode, what I really love is all the different double crosses and triple crosses. It's sort of like a heist movie or a spy movie. And Janeway is super badass at the end of this. At number 19, One from Season 4. This is another episode that I was really interested in the story concept. In fact, the concept is really why this is in my top 20. I know there's that one dude that 7 of 9 hallucinates is not my favorite thing in the world, but I love this idea that they would have to travel through this nebula that makes the whole crew sick, except for 7 of 9 and the Doctor. And I would like to have seen more stuff like this over a sustained period of time. And not that I would just want to see 7 of 9 and the Doctor be the only two on the show, because they did that in Season 7. But just this basic idea that there's these hardships that the crew have to go through for a long period of time. I would have loved it if Voyager could have done that more often. At number 18, PHAGE from Season 1. The debut of the Venetians, one of the more interesting villains in Star Trek lore. I mean, the villains are a race of people who are ravaged by disease. That's just really interesting. I think the Vanians kind of go downhill after this, in my opinion, especially that stupid episode where they split B'Elanna into a Klingon, into a human. Don't even get me started on that. But I thought that this was a very strong debut for them at the beginning of the first season. At number 17, Unity from season 3. A very interesting look into the remnants of a Borg collective before Voyager actually meets the Borg. And they, of course, use what they learn here in the Scorpion episodes a little bit later on. This episode kind of reminds me a little bit of Survival Instinct from season 6, although I do like this one a lot better. It is a strong Chakotay episode, very rare later on in season 6 and 7, so I really appreciate it here in season 3. At number 16, Remember, also from season 3, a rare, well-written B'Elanna Torres episode, although, to be fair, it's not actually about her. It's about her reliving these experiences of a particular woman from this particular society who is trying to get a message out there about the atrocities of their past so that their society can remember the atrocities of their past, learn from them, and do better. This is a lesson that I wish our own society today would really figure out. Anyway, the framing device for getting this powerful message across was really excellent. At number 15, Prey from season 4. See, this is back before season 7 when they actually knew how to write really good, compelling stories for 7 of 9. This is a very interesting dilemma, as 7 of 9 believes that they need to eliminate 8472. Janeway wants to have some compassion, and it's kind of, you can see both sides of the argument in this, which I love those types of debates. Also, I would call this the best Hirogen episode as well. At number 14, Distant Origin from season 3, the famous dinosaur episode, of course. But more than that, this is a really great depiction of what happens when religious doctrine outweighs science and a society is afraid to move forward in advance. And also, this was a really great Chakotay episode again, back in season 3 when they were still writing those. At number 13, Living Witness from season 4. So I actually only saw this for the first time a few years ago, and when I saw it for the first time, I actually didn't really like it all that much. I thought it was overrated because I thought that it was just Voyager's cheap way of trying to do a mirror universe episode. But then when I rewatched it recently, I do like it a lot more. More because of the interesting framing device of having the Doctor be in the future 1,000 years later, and how a society would look back at Voyager 1,000 years ago. That's all really interesting. And also, after having watched season 7, it's really nice to think about a really strong Doctor episode when he's still altruistic and he still cares about other people and doesn't think he's superior to them all. So the more I think about it, the more I actually really like this episode a lot. At number 12, Drone from early season 5. Another example of when they were still writing really strong episodes for 7 of 9. This is really the pinnacle of 7 of 9 episodes. I really would have liked to have seen more of this continue all the way through the end of the series. Now, the plot does remind me a lot of the Next Generation episode, The Offspring, which is also in my top 20 for the Next Generation, but with a more Borg and more 7 of 9 twist. The Data couldn't feel emotions. 7 of 9 very much can, and it's really a discovery for her for the first time, feeling like a mother of a child and then going through the suffering of losing that child. Very, very powerful episode. And at number 11, Eye of the Needle from Season 1. One of the early first season episodes, and probably the strongest in the first season, as it tells the interesting tale of Voyager trying to make friends with this Romulan scientist who they make contact with in the Alpha Quadrant, and him agreeing to help them, only to find out that he's actually in the past. That is such a very fascinating concept, and I love this episode. And now, ladies and gentlemen and non-binary individuals, it is time for the top 10 of my favorite Voyager episodes, starting with number 10. Coming in at number 10, Shattered from Season 7, the only Season 7 episode to make an appearance in my top 20 favorite episodes. And this is what they should have done more of in Season 7 in particular. First of all, returning to the great dynamic between Chakotay and Janeway that was lost somewhere along the way, somewhere in like Season 5 or so, that started fading away as they started to build up the 7 of 9 and the Doctor show a little bit more. And so it was really great to see that again. And more than that, this was a very creative way of doing a great retrospective of the series up to this point by having basically a living flashback. Not in the way that Commander Riker was laying on a table and having an awful flashback episode back in Season 2 of The Next Generation, in an episode we try not to speak of too much, but by having Chakotay going into different time periods. Now that concept is a little wonky, and there's also a couple little things you have to maybe forgive that maybe not be totally believable, like would the drone version of 7 of 9 really have helped them out? I don't know, but who cares? This episode is just so much fun. It's fun to see Seska again. It's fun to see Season 7 Chakotay interact with Season 1 Janeway. What a great concept for an episode. Too bad Season 7 couldn't have done more of this.
Number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9.
At number 9, Alliances from Season 2. Now, the Kazon have gotten a lot of flack, and much of it is very well deserved, especially back in their first appearance in the early Season 1, when they are mesmerized by the magical transporters that create food and water out of air. Even though they have warp drive, which is really stupid. However, this episode is really on to something with the Kazon, showing that there are different factions of the Kazon and that Janeway can make alliances with certain factions to go up against the Seska faction. And that was a really interesting concept that they should have continued forward with all throughout the show. Even when they leave Kazon space, they would be needing to make alliances with other species, because that's what you need to do when you are really, really far away from the Federation and just all alone in the Delta Quadrant. So the episode The Void that happens in Season 7, which did not make my list, really should have never been necessary, because they should have been doing that sort of thing this whole time. And I do wish that they had continued forward with that after this singular episode. However, still looking at this episode just individually on an island, I still find it to be a very interesting concept, and I really like this episode quite a lot, and that's why it's number 9 on my favorite episode list.
5, 6, 7, 8. Who do we appreciate? 8, 8, 8.
At number 8, Waking Moments from Season 4. So when I did my recent rewatch of Voyager, there were many episodes I didn't really remember super well, and some episodes I think I never even saw in the first place. Voyager is not like The Next Generation to me. It did not have a lot of episodes that I saw a million times and really stuck with me, and I really carried forward into my adulthood. But this is an exception. This is one that I loved and watched a million times, probably because I was really fascinated by the concept of lucid dreaming, especially when I was younger. And this does an excellent job of tackling that interesting concept, and the alien race in this episode I found to be very, very interesting. And I always loved how Chakotay was using Earth's moon to try to wake himself or to realize that he's in a dream. And he actually does that way less often than I remembered him doing it. I was thinking he did it a lot, but he only does it like 2 times or something. But I actually thought that I would try to make myself do that when I was younger, like see if I could see quote unquote Earth's moon in my dream. But it didn't work because I can see Earth's moon all the time. I'm on Earth. I'm not in the Delta Quadrant. But that's how obsessed I was with this episode. And doing my recent rewatch, I still really highly admire this episode. And yet again, I'll say it, this is when they were writing good stuff for Chakotay. You will see quite a few Chakotay episodes on this list. What you will also see on this list, a lot of, if you haven't noticed already, is Season 4 episodes. Season 4 dominates my top 20 favorite episode list. There are 7 in total Season 4 episodes out of the 20, and you will find very shortly that it also dominates the top half, my top 5 on this list. If only more seasons of Voyager could have been like Season 4, then I would be calling Voyager one of the best Star Trek shows, not just a mediocre show, which is what I call it now. At number 7, The Thaw from Season 2. Like Waking Moments, this is an episode that I remembered very clearly from the first time that I had seen it, and I actually did watch it a few times. This is an episode that really stuck with me, and Michael McKean is amazing in this episode. He is very effectively creepy as the clown in this episode. It's one of, in my opinion, the strongest guest appearances in all of Star Trek. And yes, it was effectively creepy, not just Michael McKean, but the writing in this episode, and just kind of the vague background that there wasn't just a lot going on there. It really reminded me a lot of an original series set. Like, it was very simple, but that added to the creepiness of the whole thing. If it had been, like a CGI diarrhea, which I know they didn't have CGI back then, but you know what I mean. If there had just been a lot of effects, I think that really would have taken away from the creepiness. And this episode really did creep me the fuck out. And it's not like I was, a little kid or something. I was in my early 20s when I watched this episode. But it creeped me out in the best of ways, because it made me just want to keep watching it over and over again. And I think one of the reasons why I could stomach watching it over and over again, even though it creeped me out, is because the ending is so satisfying. I just absolutely love how Janeway outwits the clown, and it's one of my favorite endings of an episode, at least in Voyager, if not in the entire Star Trek franchise, when the clown, who of course represents fear, says, "I am scared," and Janeway goes, "I know." I freaking love that. Of course, it's not really Janeway, it's the Janeway hologram, but still, absolutely love it, and this will always be one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager.
Number 6. Not just for the devil anymore. Number 6.
Number 6, Timeless from Season 5. Now, unlike the previous 2 episodes on my list, this is not something I really remembered from the old days. In fact, I'm pretty sure I had not seen it before until just a few years ago. I've now seen it at least twice, and it's starting to really grow on me. It's starting to climb that ladder of my favorite episodes. And I've never been a huge fan of Harry Kim. I think that he was underutilized, never really lived up to his potential, and oftentimes just annoyed the crap out of me about how whiny he was about women, and how he always got all excited every time there was even a glimmer of hope that they might get back to the Alpha Quadrant. It was a little annoying. And for God's sakes, make the goddamn guy a lieutenant, for the love of God. Anyways, all that aside, this is a really strong character episode for Harry Kim, and they do it in the best of ways by making a unique use of the time travel concept. And you know me, I love my time travel. And this was a really powerful episode showing what happens when a person lives with regret. And he sang the Cher song that a lot of us sing, if I could turn back time. But in his case, he was able to do it. And another really great ending of a Voyager episode, actually, is when present-day Harry Kim gets to see his alternate future self letting him know what he has done. Super powerful. Really, really great ending. Number 5 is online. Number 5. At number 5, Deadlock from Season 2. So, earlier last year I did a live discussion on the first 3 seasons of Voyager with my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity, and he informed me that there's a lot of hate out there for this episode, that there's a lot of people who do not like it, and I was kind of blown away because I love this episode. I'm like, what? How could you not love this episode? How could you not love it? It's so good. It's so interesting how we see what the Voyager crew would do when they encounter exact replicas of themselves. And it's not a parallel universe type of situation where their replicas have different memories and different experiences, or are a little different, or are completely evil like the mirror universe. It's nothing like that. No, they have all of the same memories and experiences all the way up to the point of when this episode begins, which makes this episode really unique in that way. They also don't go into the old clone tropes or any of the old tropes that Star Trek or other sci-fi has done a million times. This is a very unique episode, and it's really fascinating to see how the different crews do start to change a little bit just from their vastly different experiences on their 2 different ships. And I love the twist in this episode, and I'm not a big fan of twists in Star Trek episodes generally. I don't think they typically do a good job with them, but this one was very effective, and I didn't see it coming, in that the crew that looks like it's the one that's really needs to just go and sacrifice itself because it's all beat up and they're on the end of their lives, that's the crew that ends up surviving, and it's the other crew that ends up being taken over by the Venians, which, by the way, is another very strong Venian episode. This overall is a great episode. I don't understand why people don't like it. And the fact that Harry Kim and the baby Naomi Wildman die, and the one from the other ship come over to this ship and carry forward like nothing happened. It really reminded me of one of my favorite all-time Deep Space Nine episodes, Visionary, where the wrong O'Brien goes back into the present. I just love stuff like this. I love it so much. I don't understand why people don't love this episode. It's one of my favorites. In fact, it is number 5 on my favorite episode list.
4 of Hearts, number 4.
At number 4, Nemesis from Season 4, not to be confused with the crappy movie. This is another great episode from Season 4. So, Star Trek has often rightfully been accused of being a little too preachy at times, maybe a little heavy-handed with their messaging, but that is absolutely not the case in this episode, because this episode is very effective at showing you its message rather than just simply telling you what the message is or preaching at you. And the message, of course, is you may not necessarily know who the monsters are in war, and it could really be a little bit of both sides, but in this case, the monsters are not who you think they are. And they do this literally by showing you monstrous looking aliens, who at first I kind of thought looked like the Norsigans, but they actually do look a lot like the Predators from the Predator films. And so for us as an audience, it's just very easy to accept that these are the monsters. these are the villains. Of course they are. And the poor human-looking people, they're definitely the victims. Look at that cute little girl. It is so easy for us to accept that. So it's kind of a mindfuck once this episode is turned upside down on its head and we find out that it is actually the human-looking people who are the literal monsters. And these predator dudes, not bad guys, not at all. So it's a message that really resonates with you. Now, we as the audience, we aren't on a bunch of psychotropic drugs the way that Chakotay is, or at least I assume most of us watching it are not. I mean, I sure wasn't when I was watching this episode. But it's a powerful message nonetheless, showing you how easy it is for a government to brainwash its people with propaganda about the enemies of the state. So you have to be a little bit careful about this. And once again, an incredibly powerful episode with Chakotay in it. God, I wish they kept writing good episodes for Chakotay. But nevertheless, this is number 4 on my list.
The Three Amigos. Number 3.
At number 3, Blink of an Eye from Season 6, the only Season 6 episode to appear on my entire top 20, and it is all the way up at number 3. I generally think Season 6 really sucked, and yet it contains my 3rd favorite episode in the entire series of Voyager. So here's the thing. I had always been fascinated by this concept that when you leave Earth and you go past the speed of light, then you come back and it'll be, 100 years later or something like that. This is part of the concept of Einstein's theory of relativity. It's the whole E equals mc squared thing and all of that. So it's a concept that I had been familiar with, since middle school science class. And I never really quite understood how Star Trek got around that. I had heard some weak sauce explanations for it. Oh yeah, warp drive something. Yeah, they do the warp drive and they overcome it something. So when they actually made an episode that applied that concept, albeit in a different way, because it has something to do with this particular planet that they visit, and it's not the theory of relativity in general, I was completely fascinated by it, and I absolutely loved that they took this on. And it wasn't just that they did this concept that I was really interested in, they also did a phenomenal job with it, showing us the rapid progression of the society, going all the way back to their dark ages, going through the space age and beyond, and how Voyager was just always a part of their culture and what they thought of it and how it helped their culture develop. Really, really fascinating stuff. This was a really well-written episode. So well-written that it's hard to believe that it was in Season 6, where I just think there was a lot of bad writing. But this episode remains one of my favorite episodes in the entire Star Trek franchise. If only Season 6 had a couple more like these. At number 2, Year of Hell, Parts 1 and 2, from, you guessed it, the great Season 4. And yes, I do always combine two-parters into one entity in all of my Star Trek countdowns. So the Year of Hell really should have been the entire 4th season, and one of the producers did pitch that and was pushing for it, but the rest of the producers pushed back. They absolutely did not want to do anything serialized because that would be, I don't know, too good or something. I don't know why. So, when I think about it, what I really kind of wanted Star Trek Voyager to be is just a little bit more like Battlestar Galactica. I didn't want it to be quite as extreme as Battlestar Galactica. I think Battlestar Galactica sometimes would take it a little too far with, look at how edgy we are. I think Voyager could have done that sort of thing, but stepped it back a little bit and been really great. I really feel like Voyager, the crew was just too cushy. Like, things were just too cushy and bright and shiny and too good for them having been separated from their home base, from the Federation, and being completely on their own. Like, things should have been harder for them. So having had this for an entire season arc would have made a lot of sense. Now, you are gonna probably not have Tuvok go blind if it's a season-long arc. You're not gonna have main characters die. So you do step it back a little bit. But I would have loved to have seen them not be able to just do a time reset and just start all over again. Have to slowly rebuild in season 5 and get to a sense of normalcy again. That would have been amazing to watch. But since we did not get that, I will settle for this phenomenal pair of episodes that remind me a lot of one of my favorite all-time Next Generation episodes, which is yesterday's Enterprise, but in a very different way. A lot of great performances. Robert Beltran as Chakotay, back when they were still writing great episodes for Chakotay, as I've said before, was amazing. Kurtwood Smith, another great guest star, even if I did keep expecting him to call everyone a dumbass because of his role in That 70s Show. And of course, you have Janeway in her classic one-liner, "Time's up." You gotta love it. Even though I do wish that this was a season-long arc, it wasn't. It was just an amazing pair of episodes, some of the best in the entire Star Trek franchise. And now, my number one favorite episode of Star Trek Voyager. At number 1, my favorite episode of Star Trek Voyager is Scorpion, Parts 1 and 2. Not only my favorite episodes of Voyager, but also my favorite all-time Borg episodes. And that's a little difficult for me to say because I have a lot of nostalgia tied into Best of Both Worlds. But if I look at it objectively, Scorpion is better than Best of Both Worlds, and they are the best Borg episodes. Unfortunately, the Borg episodes go downhill very quickly after this, but we can appreciate these episodes for what they are. So Janeway, of course, is put in an impossible situation where she either has to go through Borg space or go through Species 8472 space. Species 8472 being a brand new, really creepy, really formidable opponent for a Voyager. Even though the CGI looks awful now, it was pretty scary back in the day. So she's stuck between a rock and a hard place and comes up with a very creative solution to try to make a pact with the Borg, and that leads to one of the top 3 scenes for me in all of Star Trek, which is this discussion between Janeway and Chakotay. I had mentioned earlier in another episode that I absolutely love when Star Trek can portray these debates where there's really no clear right answer, where you could see both sides of it, where they both have really good points, and nobody was better at doing those kind of debates than Chakotay and Janeway, and no debate was better than this one. And the scene where Chakotay tells the Scorpion story is absolute gold. This really is, to me, the peak of Voyager. Now, this, of course, leads to the alliance with the Borg, a very tenuous alliance at best, and the introduction of 7 of 9. And it was really a great way to bring this new character into the series. And I don't know what else to say about this episode. Just one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life, and one of the best in the entire Star Trek franchise, and at the very least, my favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me for my top 20 favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Please check out my video for my 10 least favorite episodes of Voyager. Also check out all the videos I did for TOS, TNG, and Deep Space Nine. I did these countdowns for all of those things. Please subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye!